I've just seen this article on the BBC website which is reporting a survey from the RICS which says that because of a shrinking supply of properties, property prices are going to keep increasing for the foreseeable short term to medium term, which is very interesting. And of course, in very simple terms, economics tells us that prices are decided by the balance between supply and demand. So yes, in theory, if there's a restricted supply of anything, including properties, then you would expect, all other things being equal, that prices would continue to increase. But of course, the key thing is about the other things being equal, because in order for there to be a price increase because of a shortage on the supply side, there has to be good demand or increasing demand on the demand side. So what is demand? Well, we often hear people talking as if demand is really just the desire of somebody to own a property. But it's not as simple as that, because you can desire owning a property as much as you like, but if you haven't got the money to be able to buy that property, then you're never going to be able to buy it. So demand isn't just people wanting to buy properties. Demand is people wanting to buy properties and being in a position where they can buy the property, and usually that comes down to whether they can get the finance or not. So although it's interesting that the RICS is saying that there's a shrinking supply of properties, if, for example, the banks decided that they weren't going to lend, or if they decided they were going to change their terms, or if the Bank of England started putting up interest rates, all of that could hit the demand side, which would make the shortage in the supply side totally irrelevant. I hope that makes sense. So it's interesting to a point. Now, at the moment, there probably is the money to fuel demand, and that's why we've been seeing a little mini house price boom over the last 12 months or so, despite the fact that the economy's been in recession, despite the fact we've had the pandemic. That's one of the reasons. It's actually a little bit more complicated than that. But by and large, what we can say is that despite everything, the banks are still lending, and they're still lending on decent terms, which means that most people who want to buy a property at the moment can hopefully access the cash. But if that were to change, then it wouldn't really matter what was happening on the supply side. Sure enough, if supply was shrinking while perhaps the banks were reining in their lending, that may help support prices in the short term. But at some point, if there's no money, or if the banks are saying we're not lending so much, or if we're going to make it much more difficult for you to borrow from us, then that would hit the demand side. All in all, it's an interesting article, but in order to understand what drives property prices, we have to understand what happens on both sides of the equation, on the demand side and on the supply side. I hope you found this video useful and informative, and if you did, then please come over to my website, www.thepropertyteacher.co.uk, where you'll find loads more great property-related resources, including free special reports to download, and my best-selling series of ebooks, which includes the Successful Property Renovators Workshop, 63 Common Defects in Investment Property and How to Spot Them. And if you're just starting out in property, or if you want to grow your portfolio, you may be particularly interested in the Successful Property Investors Strategy Workshop, in which I'll take you through exactly how I started and built my property portfolio, starting literally with none of my own money, and how I built a portfolio of £2 million worth of property in just 4 years, and that was starting from scratch. I'll take you through everything that I did right so that you can copy me and do the same, and I'll also show you everything that I did wrong so that you can avoid the mistakes that I made, and so that you can progress in property and be far more successful far more quickly than I ever was. And this is based upon my own real life experience, and it took me about 4 years to actually work out how to do property investing properly. But in the 200 pages in the Successful Property Investors Strategy Workshop, I'm going to show you all of that 4 years knowledge condensed down so that you can use it immediately. And until next time, here's to successful property investing.